What's up, family? Welcome to Positive Power Double XI, J. Royce Films. I'm Jerry Royce Live, and you're watching The Red Room with Shay Samuels, right here on Music Vision Television. That's right, MVTV-21.com. It's going to be awesome, y'all. So please share this file. It's going to be awesome. You know what's going to be? It's going to be lit. Ready when you are.
Welcome to the Red Room. I am your host, Shay Samuels, and you are in for a treat with another episode. On this episode, we have Dr. Duckett. I have had an opportunity to interview him on my radio show as well. And you guys, listen, be ready to be taught. Go get your pen, go get your pads, go get everything that you need to take these notes, because you're going to learn something tonight. And it's just going to be phenomenal. So listen, we're going to go ahead and introduce him in, bring him in, and then we're going to get to know more about him and then get into this teaching. So Dr. Duckett, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Shay. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. You know my song, I'm good.
Yes. I love it.
For joining us on this episode of the Red Room, where we are teaching, that we, the Bible tells us that we perish from a lack of knowledge. And so I remember when I first met you and was able to talk with you on air, and although you were there to interview, it really became a teaching moment. And I felt like this is kind of like what happened that night. And so I'm looking forward to the viewers getting a taste of that tonight. But so listen, tell everybody about who you are.
Well, look, I am pastor of New Kingdom Faith along with my wife, Dr. Duante Duckett. I believe you had her on sometime recently. So she's, we pastor the great church of New Kingdom Faith here in Glen Burnie, Maryland. We've been pastoring almost 5 years, actually, and it's been a treat. Of course, during this pandemic, so many things have changed, but our role has remained the same. In fact, I believe it has actually intensified and have allowed us to operate more in our gifts than normal. So I'm an individual that just loves to teach, a pastor that loves to teach and loves to do ministry at every single level. So that's who I am.
Well, you make pandemic look simple. You make it look smooth. You make it look easy. I love how you just are, kind of.
It's intentional.
Yeah, and I love what you said too. You said the pandemic has really brought about change, and so there are a lot of people in the year, the start of the year, January 2020. I started talking about 2020 vision and how 2020 vision wasn't the clearest of all visions, actually 2015, and so that's a whole another message. But either way, I was talking about how 2020 isn't the clearest of visions, and that's just regularly, with our sight. And here a pandemic hit right after that. And so many people got unfocused fast. So many people forgot about their vision. So many people forgot about their dreams, and they started to focus on the distraction. And so tonight we're going to be talking about obedience being greater than sacrifice. And so I thought nobody better to talk about that but with you. To utilize this as an opportunity to teach the viewers tonight, because so many people are and when I say falling astray, I don't just mean spiritually. I just mean even it can be mentally, physically. So many people aren't being obedient to what they should be doing, and that's straying away. So what does that scripture mean to you? And how have you taught on that scripture before?
Yes, I have. I've utilized it a number of times. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And I am convinced, and we'll probably get a lot deeper into this, that the pandemic, and we shared this before, but I'm gonna share it again, has exposed our obedience level. It has exposed to us how obedient we really are to the word of God. Are we going to believe the word? Or are we going to believe what we're experiencing? What is going to really be our compass? What is really going to guide us? What the pandemic has exposed you, and you can see it. You probably interviewed some others, even yourself, as you've seen the opportunity for you to stay focused and really have the opportunity for more opportunities to come your way because of your focus while in the pandemic, because you remained obedient to your vision.
Yes. And the thing that I love you said was exposure.
Yes.
There's a such thing as the remnant.
Yeah. I know I'm one of them, so I'm just I know one of them.
There's a such thing as the remnant, and the remnant are the ones who stay the course, no matter what it looks like. If it was an army, people would see the remnant being the ones who are not afraid to get in the mud, and they know that this obstacle course is about to come its way, and they're already planning it ahead.
Yes.
How am I going to get over this hill? How am I going to get over this mountain? How am I going to get from this rope to the next? And so when the obstacle comes, we're already prepared for it. And then there's some people who are day by day. They're day by day. And if I could use this analogy, I always talk about vehicles, because our bodies are like vehicles, and sometimes we don't really reboot. We're forced to reboot. And even in our physical bodies, we're not being obedient. But I like how you said, I love how you said it. You said that the pandemic brought about exposure. I watched how many people fell by the wayside when they couldn't go into actual physical events. I watched how the preaching stopped. I watched how the singing stopped. I watched how many singers disappeared because they were no longer able to be seen the way that they had been seen before. But I also watched the remnant step up. I watched the remnant understand what to do and how to start catering to whatever the pandemic was providing as far as technology. So this is something that the pandemic allowed us to do. We talk to one another, over the phone, but we've never been able to see one another face to face or within it. And so the technology allowed us to do that. And so just talk to us more about the exposure piece of the pandemic, because there's a lot of people who don't realize, and exposure can be good and bad too, because there's a lot of people who rose up and mask companies were created. Companies that you've been thinking about forever, not you personally, but if you're looking at this episode, you've been thinking about for a long time, came to fruition in the pandemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of people who were talking about how they wanted to become a lot more healthier with the way that they ate, because you were set down due to the pandemic, you had no choice but to start getting the healthy food. So let's talk about exposure and what that really means.
Well, I believe it means, specifically as it relates to this pandemic, what you've been called to do, and it has directed you in that direction. Calling is literally calling you into that direction. In the pandemic exposed how real you were to your calling. You said it, you had a lot of people that loved the exposure, and soon as the exposure was gone, they couldn't make that pivot. My son gave me one of the greatest compliments. He said, "Dad, one of the things I love about you is that, when things happen, you know how to pivot real quickly. You don't stay stuck. You find your opportunity and you pivot." And I believe that's a gift that God has given me, but it also shows persons that, okay, if something does happen, if this thing is not working the way I had planned it, am I able to pivot and still be able to do what God has called me to do? And you made that, great point. Singers, preachers, all these persons stopped because the light stopped. The exposure was gone. You couldn't get the I want to say gig that you would normally get during the summer. Okay, you had all the conferences that you would normally get during the summer. You couldn't get those any longer. They weren't paying you. You may have to do it streaming. You had to charge less, and persons couldn't make that adjustment. Man, a pandemic, if you're operating out of obedience, your adjustment levels are there. You're going to make the adjustment that you need to make. You're going to make the pivots that you need to make, because you can't survive unless you're operating out of your purpose. That's how you know when you really are moving and called towards what God has called you. You can't survive without operating out of your purpose.
And I love again that you said that, because obedience will cause you to stretch.
Yes, it will.
A lot of people don't want to do that. That stretching hurts.
Yes.
If you've never worked out before and you started stretching, you will realize that you'll realize that when you begin to stretch in a certain area, because you haven't done it, it's going to be hard.
Yes.
Some people stop at the start.
Stopping at the start.
Go ahead.
Lord have mercy.
Please
listen. And that is so, because the easiest thing we know for anybody, we're in business, you have your broadcast going on right now, and the things that you've been able to, the easiest thing is to start things. The hardest thing is to finish them. But what happens when you start it and it doesn't come out the way you expect it to come out, and you immediately stop? There are so many individuals that do not have the tenacity to be able to press through that starting point to make sure they're able to get to that middle section and then be able to hopefully make it towards the end, or make it to the end, whatever that end may be. Man, that's stopping, even when you start, is a struggle for many persons, because their expectation level of what the start would look like doesn't add up. The expectation that they was expecting doesn't add. They was expecting all this platform, expecting these likes, they was expecting these viewerships, and it doesn't add up. So now you don't want to do it. Well, that really, you know what that does, Shay? You know what that really exposes? It really exposes the fact that that really wasn't your calling. If you can start, if you can stop when you started and you don't go back, that means it really wasn't your calling.
I'm going to read out of 1 Samuel 15:22, and I'm going to read out of the New Living Translation. It says, "But Samuel replied, what is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offering and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of the rams." And so a lot of people, what you were saying is, a lot of people, they offered what they thought they should be offered.
Right.
They offered they offered their idea. Yep. They offered what their heart desired. They offered what they felt other people wanted. And then when the pandemic hit, there was no longer a need for it. Regardless of what it was, there was no longer a need for it. There are so many people, and I shout out to a lot of my friends who actually, like you said, pivoted in the pandemic. One of my trainers, I literally watched his business grow over the past few years, and the pandemic closed one of the shops, at one of the centers that he really wanted to open up, and he did it. He actually did it, but the pandemic caused it to close. Well, I watched how he came back with an on-demand there's a difference. So when you're obedient to your purpose, and when you're obedient to the call, like it literally happened where he became an on-demand subscriber, where you can now go on and do a video on demand that he sends to you. And that's what purpose will do. There are a number of people who literally stopped. And I've heard them say, the pandemic caused my business to close.
Can't. There's no way.
Go ahead.
There's no way. There's no way it could cause your business to close, because regardless of what had happened or what venue you were operating in, your purpose is literally drawing you to the success in the era that it's in. So the era that we're in is all visual, it's all on demand, it's all streaming, all of that is what's in it. So your purpose is going to lead you to the opportunity for you to continue operating in your purpose. So that hence, again, that really just exposes in this, and you know what, Shay? Most persons won't know. It really exposes that it wasn't your calling. So get out of what that was and really find and discover your calling.
Woo!
Yes. It's really.
What? Here's what I love you said. It's just that simple. Like when you did that. It is really that simple.
Really
so many people have gone through 2020 from January even up until now. We're 1 month shy of 2021, and there are so many people who are still stuck. You don't know how many people I talk to throughout the course of the day, and they literally tell me how stuck they feel.
Wow.
And here's the thing that happens with the stuck. The stuck comes with an excuse. So for 2020, it's been the pandemic, it's been the coronavirus, it's been the layoffs of the job. And I'm not saying that stuff isn't real, but that's where you stopped. And so we talked about the starting and the stopping in the explosion. Some people who talked about endurance and possibly prayed for endurance all 2019. And when 2020 hit, you had an opportunity to endure.
That's right. You had the opportunity. And that is so critical, because what God, how often have we prayed for something and then God allowed the opportunity? God, strip me of everything. I don't want to be this person. I want to be the person. And then the stripping actually happens and you're mad at God. God, why are you allowing it? You prayed for it. I mean, that's what you prayed for. And so I'm allowing that. And here in this pandemic, God is saying, listen, for the remnant, because we got to make sure we stay on the remnant. For the remnant, they know exactly that this was a setup from God. This was the opportunity for the remnant to really be exposed and really take advantage. For we know the wealth of the wicked is laid up for who? The righteous. Okay, government throwing money, just throwing it. Come get it, come get it. Are you going to waste it, or are you going to use it to operate in your purpose? Come on. And that's what happened. So when when you were obedient to your call, I've been teaching on this for a few weeks, Shay, and it has really arrested me. Galatians 2:20. For I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but it's the Christ that lives in me. And that right there, the moment you get you out of the way and you allow the Christ in you to operate, you're going to have no reason, you're going to have no choice but to operate in your calling. Because what we've seen, Shay, in this season is you've seen the people, thank you, God, you've seen the people operate with the gift that they have in them. But when that platform has been reduced to nothing, they couldn't make the adjustment. What we see right now, persons like yourself, others that we know, what we found is that we found about the gift of us, the gift of you. That's what the pandemic has exposed, the gift of you, meaning wherever you show up, it's going to manifest. That's what the obedience better than sacrifice begins. It exposed the gift of you.
Yeah, that's really good. There's a second part to the obedience over it's being greater than sacrifice too, because there's a lot of people feeling like they're sacrificing even during this season where, I have to spend my savings. I have to spend my checking. I'm all out of the money that I didn't save.
Right.
But there's there's the exposure of lack of storing up in your house.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is you should have been saving up your money. You never know what's going to come. And so if you don't become obedient, even in this with ensuring, what happens if the bank system crashes?
Right.
So what have you learned in the pandemic where now you understand I can't rely on the job. I can't rely on the bank. The government showed me that anything can happen to what I work for.
Absolutely.
So how do I have it work for me? And I started thinking about Joseph when Joseph was storing up. And at the end of that 10-year, all of the crops that they should store up. Even when it comes down to your food, when I had a nursing home, I used to store up. It was a requirement of me to have food items for anything that would happen, an emergency food storing. This is the time for us to be obedient, even in those things. We've heard about apocalypse and we've heard about all of this. This 2020 was real. And people don't understand at this point in time that it's time to be obedient even to that. Start storing up. What do you say about that? And how do you feel personally about that?
Well, I believe a great exercise that I shared with my congregation when the pandemic hit, is I asked them a question. If you could go back to January 2019 and you knew for a fact March 2020 there would be a pandemic, what would you do? What would you start doing? Of course, I would save. I would do this. I would make sure I have this in order, make sure I have that in order. So guess what? You need to start doing that right now, because of course this thing is going to happen again. It is always, these things always happen this way. There's always these type of events that are unexpected. So you need to continually store. Secondly, of course, why are you relying on one stream of income? Please help me understand, why are you relying on one stream of income? That was one of my first prayer calls that I had, is that God, there will be supernatural debt elimination and God will provide another source of income. And now, don't get me wrong, God doesn't provide another source of income to folk that are lazy. He doesn't do it. He will provide income, another stream of income for those individuals that have their hand to the plow. So in saying that, as I mentioned, I truly believe that this pandemic should have shown folk that, guess what, it's time for us, like you mentioned, store up. You don't know what can come your way. You don't know what your industry, person talked about their industry, like you said, just shut down. The sports entertainment industry shut down. You got 6-figure jobs where now you're living with your parents because you didn't store up.
Yeah.
And that's what, as you have mentioned, obedience to the word. Shay, the word tells us, I get so excited about when I talk about the word because it tells us everything, how to prepare. Joseph showed us, oh, hey, guess what? We're going to be in this thing for 7 years. We need to make sure we stored up.
Yeah.
And you don't know when your 7 years going to hit. So start storing up.
Yeah, it's imperative. And, it's funny how the media has really changed. I did another message on the illusion.
Okay.
And so the media has, and I use the media as an example because we are so fixated on what the media is showing us and
Yes.
how many people were in grocery stores actually fighting over toilet paper.
Right.
Toilet paper. Toilet paper. And here we're still in the pandemic. They have not even talked about toilet paper anymore.
Nope.
And so it goes back into, if you understood what the requirement is for you in your obedience, you would be able to teach people more. You would be able to, and I love what you're doing. I love that you asked that question. And I think I'm going to ask that question too. So if you could go back to January 2019 and then go to March 2020, if you knew that it was going to happen. I remember in October 2019 hearing save your money differently. I remember that. And I didn't do it. I didn't.
Wow.
February, I had an opportunity to do, I heard the same thing, save the money, and I had an opportunity to do it, and I did. And I'm so glad I did, because May 2020, I was let go from the company that I was for 5 years. And so I'm thankful for that. Dr. Duckett, I thank you for the opportunity of being able to be on the show with me today. It was definitely an honor. I know that you all have gotten something out of this. This was definitely a teaching moment. Please make sure that you connect with him and tune in for another episode of Red Room with me, your host, Shay Samuels. Bye-bye.
All right, cut.
For the Lord is my shepherd, my then, now, and after. A solid rock that's consistent, can solve a problem in an instant. Lord, I love you. Lord, I love you. Can't live without you. Can't live without you. Lord, I need you. Lord, I need you. I need you in my life. I need you in my life. For the Lord is my shepherd, my then, now, and after. A solid rock that's consistent, can solve a problem in an instant. I found in life that God is a must, for it is in Him that I put my trust. I love you so much, doesn't matter what I heard. They can say what they want, just as long as it's in your word. Lord, I love you. Lord, I love you. Can't live without you. Can't live without you. Lord, I need you. Lord, I need you. Need you in my life, life. Yeah, I love you, Lord. You're the source of my
of God's people. I'm teaching the youth a lesson about hanging out with these losers, that if they choose to, they die, or maybe end up in prison. Don't make the mistakes I made. There were plenty nights that I prayed that God would give me the power, like Samson against Goliath, the power over my circumstances. I will abide in the house of the Lord forever, would never go back again. As a dog returns to his vomit, I never go back to sin. I'm rapping with Canton Jones. Go ahead and start throwing your stones. If you like it or not, it's on. I've been waiting to do this song. The Avengers of Christianity. You can call us whenever there is a problem. We'll activate superpowers.
I'm ready, sorry, higher and higher. We gon' let her down now. He's a fighter, a fighter.
Renew his strength. They shall mount up wings as eagles, and they'll run and not faint. I say to you today, mount up and soar. Be who God called you to be. Is there one? Is there one in this building? I'm asking, do we have one? Is there one? Come and give God your heart.
Yeah. He gave us his word, I know we gon' do it. Yeah. He lives in our heart, he'll get us through it. Yeah. We gon' keep on soaring, won't give up now. Cause we know that he'll never
I'm
give
soaring
up
like a
on
balloon.
us.
I keep going higher than the moon. I keep flying, holding his hand, and I'm not looking for no landing. I'm just trusting, not leaning to my own understanding. Fail so many times, but God is the reason I'm standing. If you ain't soaring, you boring. I'm a lion and I'm roaring, imploring you to understand. Without Jesus, you ain't scoring. I made many mistakes in my life, and I thought I was winning. I had made it so far, but still I was just at the beginning. Jesus, free me from this sinning, and I'm screaming, Jesus, I believe. Got my hands up like somebody robbing me. Submit to you totally. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done. You're the only one.
I'm ready, sorry, higher and higher. We gon' let her down now. He's a fighter, a fighter. Yeah. He gave us his word, I know we gon' do it. Yeah. He lives in our heart, he'll get us through it. Yeah. We gon' keep on soaring, won't give up now. Cause we know that he'll never give up.
Ever since Christ been in my life, I done rolled to the top, fam, just like cream. Everything that I prayed for, he allowed it to happen. I'm living the American dream. I'm an entrepreneur, I came from the bottom and worked my way to the top. And just like I did, you can do the same thing. It's yourself, you stop. From prison to power is the name of a book and a song that I release. The prison starts in the mind, Jesus Christ is the only one that can set you free. Bow down to